stirs the deepest interest and sympathy. In the world around us, we see legions of men and women who are trying to cure or escape their problems by these means. Many AAs, especially those who have suffered these particular addictions, are asking, what can we do about drugs within our fellowship and without? $1 million question. Glad you asked that, because he's going to answer it right now. Oh, yeah, back in 58, by the way. And it says, because several projects to help pill and drug takers are already afloat, project which uses the AA 12 steps in which AA members are active, there has risen a whole series of questions as how these efforts already meeting with not a little success can be rightly related to AA groups or AA as a whole. Rightly related. Oh, okay. So now he made that statement, so let's see what it is. Specifically, here are a list of questions, and we will finish up with them. You might want to write this down. This is tradition 3 with membership. Okay. Can a non-alcoholic pill or drug addict become a member of AA? Number 2, can such a person be brought as a visitor to an open AA meeting for help and inspiration? Number 3, can a pill or drug taker who has a genuine alcoholic history become a member of AA? 4, can AAs who have suffered both alcoholism and addiction form themselves into special purpose groups to help other AAs who are having drug trouble? 5, could such a special purpose group call itself an AA group? Could such a group, number 6, could such a group also include non-alcoholic users? Number 7, if so, should these non-alcoholic pill or drug users be led to believe that they can become members of AA or become AA members? 8, is there any objection of if AAs who have had the dual problem join outside groups such as Addicts Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous? Remember last week the difference between an AA group and a group of AAs? Now, he's opened up a very interesting subject. A difference between we had the open-closed meetings that we went to last week, and what he just talked about, what's called a special purpose meeting, which might imply special groups. Got something clarified in 1977 from the chairman of the General Service Board that we will hopefully explain what that is and is not. He broached the subject here in 1958, but for some reason, we need to be told over and over and over and over, and still not getting it. But anyhow, it's going to be clarified right here. This is one of the most powerful documents that we have as far as what a AA group is, and meetings and special purpose meetings and so on and so forth. Anyhow, he goes on to say, well, some of these questions answer themselves, others do not. But all of them, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, I think can readily be resolved by the satisfaction of everyone if we have a good look at the AA traditions which apply and another look at our long experience with the special purpose groups which AAs are active in today, both within and without our society. Once again, we're taking a good look at the traditions and our experience. Experience is history. It's undebatable. It's happened. It's unchangeable. It is what it is, nothing more, nothing less. So your question is what is a special purpose group? Once again, clarification from the chairperson of the General Service Board, 1977. It goes as this: when other requirements are added that might seem to exclude some alcoholics, should should be considered AA meetings and non-AA groups. Groups for men, groups for women, groups for priests, groups for lawyers, group for gays, group for doctors, group for pilots, you fill in the blank. These should be called special purpose meetings, not special groups. One more time. These should be called special purpose meetings, not special groups. Because that will give the impression of uniqueness if you had a special group, creating exclusion of some alcoholics, diverting us from our primary purpose. Remember this tradition I said is to be inclusive, not exclusive. He goes on to say, and you might want to jot these down or get the CDs. This is powerful of what the Society of Alcoholics Anonymous is now. He says, I mentioned earlier that we have never discouraged special purpose meetings, not groups, but have been hesitant to list as groups that might seem to preclude other alcoholics attending. Perhaps we might talk a little bit about the difference between an AA meeting and an AA group. Our directory states, this is quotation, traditionally, 2 or 3 more alcoholics meeting together for the purpose of sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided as a group they are self-supporting and have no outside affiliation. Third tradition. Oh, I get it. So we've had it. We've ratified it in 1950, and it's all over, and here's what it is. But he had to tell us again in 1977 what it is and isn't. He goes on to say, and in the beginning of our fellowship in countries outside the United States and Canada, we agreed on 6 points which describe an AA group. 6 points. Here they are. Number 1, all members, not some, not most, not a lot, not quite a few. All members of a group are alcoholics, and all alcoholics are eligible for membership. Period. Point number 1. Number 2, as a group, they are fully self-supporting. We know that's in a few weeks, tradition 7. Number 3, a group's primary purpose, pertinent idea, stay tuned with that. There's a couple, 3 or more traditions that have that. Okay, a group's primary purpose is to help alcoholics recover through the 12 steps. I need to stop right there. How many meetings are doing that with the 12 steps? My God, I've been to so many meetings where you don't even hear the 12 steps. You don't even hear the big book. And you call this a what? Go to halfway through that, and I'm ready to get a drink because I don't know where I'm at. They didn't read the preamble, but they're not doing this. They're not doing any of this. Go on. Goes on with this, okay? As a group, they have no outside affiliation. No outside affiliation. None. 0. Not, okay? 5, as a group, they have no opinion on outside issues. In other words, what Bill said, the good is the deadly enemy of the best. And when it comes to Alcoholics Anonymous, nothing but our very best will ever be good enough. Alcoholics Anonymous, period. Okay, and then number 6, as a group, their public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion, and they maintain personal anonymity of the level of press, radio, TV, and film. And we know that's 11. I don't know how much simpler it can be what a group is and isn't. I don't know how much simpler it can be the AA group, open, close meeting. It's all here. Black words, white pages, follow it. So that's the difference between a special group and special meeting and all that kind of stuff. It's powerful. It's powerful, I mean, for all of us in this room. And I suppose that's why in the doctor's opinion with Dr. Silkworth, when he talks about what an alcoholic and alcoholism is, it's threefold. Sick in body, sick in mind, sick in soul. Doesn't say different zip codes. It doesn't say sexual preference. It doesn't say money. It doesn't say religion. It doesn't say color of skin. It doesn't say all that crap that we're bringing in here and dividing us. It doesn't say that. Alcoholism. In fact, you know what? Alcoholism doesn't have genitalia. It doesn't give a damn if you're male or female. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have that distinction. It just doesn't have it. So he goes on to say, it says, now there are certain things that AA cannot do for anybody, regardless of what our several desires or sympathies may be. Listen where he's putting this thing. This is tradition 1. Look where he snuck it in. Our first duty, number 1, okay, as a society is to ensure our own survival. So unity. Therefore, we have, not should, could, ought to, avoid distractions and multi-purpose activity. An AA group as such cannot take on all the personal problems of its members, let alone the problems of the world. Oh, that would be tradition 5. Remember how I said it's all setting up for that? Okay, now he takes that idea and really is going to explain it to me in case I don't get it. Sobriety. Freedom from alcohol through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps is the sole purpose of an AA group. Tradition 5, tradition 6. But look where he's at. So in other words, you can't separate them. They're getting tighter and tighter and tighter, these traditions. Okay? And it says, groups repeatedly tried other activities and they have always failed. Not sometimes, not most, not a lot, not quite a few. So, I guess my group is going to be different. Right? Yeah, my group is going to be different. Okay. It has also learned that there is no possible way to make non-alcoholics into AA members. Period. Delivering the mail, not hitting you with the mailbox. That's what it says. I think we're getting it here. Now listen to what he says here. Pretty powerful next. We have, not should, could, ought to, confine our membership to alcoholics, and we have to confine our AA groups to a single purpose. I get it, so they're all in the same, okay? Because like I said, with that, then we can do the rest of these traditions. And if not, then we can't. Okay, he goes on to say, if we don't stick to these principles, we shall almost surely collapse. And if we collapse, we cannot help to anyone. Okay, to illustrate, let's review some typical experiences. Years ago, we hoped to give AA membership to our families and certain non-alcoholic friends who had been greatly helpful. They had their problems too, and we wanted them in our fold. Regretfully, we found this was impossible because they couldn't make straight AA talks, nor, save a few exceptions, could they identify with new members. Oh, one alcoholic with another, okay? Hence, they couldn't do continuous 12-step work. Close to us as these good folks are, we had, not should, could, ought to, deny them membership. We could only welcome them at our open meetings. Therefore, I see no way of making non-alcoholic addicts into AA members. Experience says loudly that we can admit no exceptions. Even though drug users and alcoholics happen to be first cousins of sort, if we persist in trying this, I'm afraid it will be hard on the drug user himself as well as on AA. Crucial sentence coming up. We must, not should, could, ought to, accept the fact that no non-alcoholic, whatever his affliction, can be converted into an alcoholic AA member. Now he goes on. He's going to make a big, important thing for us all. He says, suppose, though, we are approached by a drug addict who nevertheless has had genuine alcoholic history. There was a time when such a person would have been rejected, but many early A's had the almost comical notion that they were pure alcoholics, guzzlers only, No other serious problems at all. When alcoholic, ex-cons, and drug users first turned up, there was such pious indignation. What will people think, Shannon, these pure alcoholics? Happily, probably you're an ass is what they'll think, but anyhow. Happily, this foolishness has since long evaporated. Turn the page, if you will. If you can, second paragraph, when it talks about the special purpose and not of AA groups. Second paragraph, such is the sum of what AA cannot do for narcotics addicts or anybody else. Now and then, what can be done? Very effective answers to problems other than freedom from alcohol I've always found through special purpose groups. And he goes on to clarify what that is. We talked about that. Skip the next couple sentences, last sentence in that next paragraph. Obviously, this was not an AA group. Instead, it was a group of AAs. A group of AAs and non-AAs who devoted themselves to a special task. So, if you weren't here last week, it's worth repeating, and please do yourself a favor once again. An AA group tells us what we can and cannot do. But as a group of AAs, do anything you want. Save the world. Save the flowers. Save whatever. Do it all. But don't call it an AA group because it is not. Do all whatever you want. But don't list that as an AA meeting at the intergroup office. Do not list that as a meeting in our area. Do not list that meeting as an AA meeting in our district. Do not list that meeting in World Services because it is not. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. Have at it. I'm good for all kinds of causes. But that's not the time and place to do that. One thing and one thing only here. Alcoholics Anonymous, 12 steps, 12 traditions, 12 concepts. It goes on to the next. He's going to bring us next paragraph is talking about clubs and groups and special purpose. We can't even have that. And by the way, there is no such thing as an AA club, an AA dance, an AA softball team, AA golf league, AA all that. We don't have none of that because that would divert us from our primary purpose. We'd start arguing, we'd start fighting. Before you know it, everybody would be drunk. One thing and one thing only, recovery from alcoholism. And as long as we have that, it ensures everything. Second tradition, first tradition, and guess what? There's nothing to do but recover or get sick or stay sick. Okay, that next paragraph where it says it took many years of hassling. 224, third to last paragraph. It took years of hassling to prove that you couldn't put an AA group in the club business and make it stick. Everywhere today, club managers and their due-paying members are seen as special purpose groups, not as AA groups. Next sentence. Now he talks about detox and sober homes. Guess what? These sober homes or whatever you want to call them, recovery houses or whatever you call them. I had news for you. They've been around since the 30s. Nothing new here. And it says the same thing happened with our drying out places and our 12-step houses. The same thing. Oh, okay. I'm getting it now. Skip the next paragraph where it says, now we talk about retreats in AA groups. Retreat groups have a religious purpose. At first, they wanted to call themselves AA groups of various descriptions, but they soon realized that this could not because their groups had a dual purpose, both AA and religion. Couldn't do that. Next, he talks about education. And obviously, there's alcohol education. And it says another time of his age went into the field of education, and he was one of them, and goes on to say that obviously the same thing happened. Middle of page 225, I think it's the fourth paragraph down. It says, we cannot, page 225, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. We cannot give a membership to non-alcoholic narcotic addicts. But like everyone else, They should be able to attend certain open AA meetings, provided, of course, that the groups themselves are willing. AA members who are so inclined should be encouraged to band together in groups to deal with sedative and drug problems. They ought to refrain from calling themselves AA groups. Next paragraph, skip the first sentence where it says, but obviously, such a dual-purpose group should not insist that it be called an A group, nor should it use the A name in its title. Neither should straight addicts contingent be led to believe that they have become AA members by reason of such association. We are going to find out, and contrary to what maybe some think, when we are that pompous, we are that arrogant, we are that end-all be-all that we can cure everybody and everything, how dare we kill people? How dare we think that we've got the answers for everything? Don't worry about what they are doing to us. What are we doing to them? And obviously we'll find out in tradition 5 and 6, we need to have the right medicine for the right illness. We must go to the right doctor to get the right treatment. And if we don't, we're killing people, and we're killing each other. And we're killing Alcoholics Anonymous and a lot of other things. Now, what I say, what it says here and about the word parish, we'll get off the soapbox or the editorial thing, but it's something that we need to look at. And I talked about it, and it's worth saying again if you weren't here. You had this driven home this is 2017, May of 2014, when our youngest granddaughter was born, in the waiting room talking to my son's father-in-law, my son's father. And he asked me about the AA thing, if I was still doing it, and I said, oh, yeah, I am. He said, I tried it. My ears perked up. I said, oh, I got one. And he said, yeah, I'm never coming back. And if you were here and heard the story again, it's worth it. If you haven't, you heard it again. I said, why aren't you going back to AA, Bob? He said, I went to a meeting for a week straight. Not once did they talk about alcohol or alcoholism. I couldn't relate to what they were talking about, and I'm never going to go back. And I cried when she was born, talking about our granddaughter, and I cried what they did to my son-in-law's father, because he ain't coming back. Now, whether he will say that to his drinking buddies or anybody else remains to be seen, but you can see what a group can or cannot do. Painful as it is. Okay, it goes on, last paragraph, and it says, in AA, the group has strict limitations, but the individual scarcely has any. Remembering to observe the traditions of anonymity and non-endorsement, the AA member can carry AA's message to every troubled area of this very troubled world. Before we close up, that begs $1 million question. What is AA's message? And is that what we are carrying individually and together? We're going to go ahead and answer this, and then we're going to read the last page that we have on 333, but to clarify this, we're done. He's answered our questions. Remember those questions that we had, the 8 questions, or he says, here are the specific questions. They answered in blue on there. Specifically, here are a list of questions which are often asked. Number 1, can a non-alcoholic pill or drug addict become an AA member? It says no. Number 2, Can such a person be brought as a visitor to an open AA meeting for help and inspiration? Yes. If so, should these non-alcoholic pill or drug users be led to believe that they can become AA members? No. Can a pill or a drug user who has genuine alcoholic history become a member of AA? The answer is yes. And he goes on, and we read the rest of the articles on here. And it's powerful, powerful, powerful that I understand that. What I'm trying to say is there are no new sins under the sun. And what everybody's talking about today, been there, done that, and there is no interpretation on it. It's black and white. Last but not least, on page 333, about being non-exclusive, and let's see what he says. Bottom of the page, second to last paragraph, where it says, let us not, therefore. Page 333. It says, let us not, therefore, pressure anyone with our individual or even our collective views. Let us instead accord each other the respect and the love that is due to every human being as he tries to make his way towards the light. Let us always, not sometimes, not most, not a lot, not quite a few, try to be inclusive rather than exclusive. Let us remember that each alcoholic among us is a member of AA as long as he so declares. We're going to go ahead and finish this last two sentences there. And it says, as drinkers, we have been more subject to these forms of destruction than most other people. Here, we thank God we do, and I trust we shall continue to have a tremendous amount of awareness of our responsibilities. Third pertinent idea, for improvement. Skip the next paragraph and we'll read these last three. Let us never fear needed change. Certainly we have to discriminate the change for worse and changes for better. But once a need becomes clearly apparent in an individual or group as a whole, it has been long since found that we cannot stand still and look the other way. The essence of all growth is a willingness to change for the better, and an unremitting willingness to shoulder whatever the responsibility. In conclusion, it is only fair to say that we of AA have been able in most areas of our lives together make substantial gains in both our willingness and capability for the acceptance and discharge of responsibility. Last paragraph. As we look into the future, we clearly see that even a greater willingness will certainly be the key to the progress which God intends for us all to move towards His appointed destiny. So in conclusion, and I'm sure it's not by coincidence, on the back page of this Declaration of Unity, you might want to write this down too. It was July of 1970. It's one of Bill's latest gifts to us. Bill died that following January of 1971. And how did he know to write this before he left? This, we owe to AA's future to place our common welfare first, to keep our fellowship united, for on AA unity depends our lives and the lives of those to come. So, in conclusion, the three pertinent ideas once again come alive. And with the third tradition, long form, that indeed will ensure, because we're following tradition 2, that we will have essential unity, substantial, permanent, powerful, perfect unity, which is the requirement if Alcoholics Anonymous is going to stay alive and healthy. It can be alive and not healthy, but it's so clear to see now that I understand that this third tradition is for every alcoholic, never to be excluded by anything as long as they are alcoholic. And then it also clarifies to this group pamphlet what an open meeting is, what a closed meeting is, the difference between an AA group, a group of AAs, a meeting of AAs and an AA meeting, a special purpose, allegedly, group, and a special purpose meeting. So now that I understand that, remember the thing that I said that we left out was this, relations. Now that I got that, remember the 3 levels of relations that this thing was all about. Relations with myself, and obviously with my fellow man and with God. We talked about that. Another word for humility, but he talked about the relations of ourselves to the group to all of Alcoholics Anonymous, and all of Alcoholics Anonymous to society as a whole. So it just keeps building. It's a pyramid, if you will. It's like the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an additive process. We just keep adding and adding and adding. So next week, we'll talk about probably the one tradition that a lot of people don't understand. And what I'm saying about that is it's more about the group's tradition 4. So please come back now that we have an understanding of where we're at with 1, 2, and 3. 4, by no mistake, fits in exactly where it needs to be after we have the third tradition and are embracing it and living by it. Then it tells us, now that we have that, what our groups should and shouldn't do. And we are done by 8:30. If we can close with our Lord's Prayer, we'll appreciate it. See you next week, I hope. Some people have got a little bit of a drive afterwards. Hi, everybody. I'm a real alcoholic of the hopeless variety. My name's Harmon. Hey, it's good to see everybody tonight. I mean that from the bottom of my heart for a lot of different reasons. And I think most of you know, and the ones that you don't know, I'll let you find out when you find out for that point in time. Anyhow, because of God's grace and because I'm a member in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I found a couple books one of them's called Alcoholics Anonymous, and found this gem that we're going to be reading, and sometimes we refer to this one 12 and 12 and other assorted literature because of all those. I found the 12 steps called Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because of those aforementioned things, not because of me, in spite of me, God's graced me today with 11,036 days, which is 30 years, 2 months, and 17 days of physical recovery or physical sobriety. How about that? And we're talking about the real deal, about the emotional sobriety, what we've really found out about what we find with these 12 traditions. Anyhow, we like to start with a couple house cleaning things before we pray the Serenity Prayer. One of them, we've got somebody that's so gracious enough for taping. Thank you for doing that. Normally we have books back there for sale or borrow. I guess we're caught up, so if you somebody was looking for a book to buy or borrow, you got an extra one there? Okay, so if you can buddy up with somebody or bring it back, we are using Language of the Heart. The church asked us to stay down in this area other than the bathrooms or the drinking fountains. Of course, if you're going to smoke, make sure you do the butt receptacles. And we are doing the seventh tradition, which means we're self-supporting. Is that already going around? Whenever it gets there, if you would be so kind, thank you so much. We got that going for us. And we always like to go to a special place before we pray the Serenity Prayer from the heart versus saying the prayer from the head, because it really is the difference between night and day, if we could. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Simply said, I've got it for what it's worth, the schedule. Lord willing, we are not going to be here October the 11th and November 22nd, which is Thanksgiving Eve, because a lot of people are traveling as guilty as charged. So that's the schedule. We'll be off those 2 Wednesdays. Heaven forbid if we have another change. If there is, we'll try to deal with that as it goes. Take them as you need or not, or write down those 2 dates that we won't be there. Another prayer that we say to try to get what we need to get as far as what Bill's writing is a set-aside prayer to specifically ask God to open our minds, our heart, and our souls. And I joke about it that the 12 Steps stole this from the Oxford group, call it soul surgery, and this is even another type of soul surgery, if you will, the 12 traditions. Anyhow, this set-aside prayer goes like this. Lord, today, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything that I think I know about others, everything I think I know about my own recovery, for a new experience in myself and a new experience in my own recovery. Thank you, Paul, for getting those out. And something that was given to me, I'm going to go ahead and read. It's a new thing from our General Service Office. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but it's relevant in AA today, and it's kind of different. And then the reason that it's really relevant is it actually is the long tradition, our long form of Tradition 1. Anyhow, it's called Safety Card for AA Groups. And if you haven't been with us, we really need to have this pamphlet. Obviously, they are for sale at, is this price still good, 30 cents down at the office down there? It explains the difference between an AA group and a group of AAs, and since these traditions specifically deal with the AA groups, I need to have a grasp on what that is and isn't. Anyhow, this is called Safety Card for AA Groups. Anybody hear this yet? Oh boy, I like to be the first one. Yeah, a couple of them. Okay, it goes like this. Suggested statement on safety. Our group endeavors to provide a safe meeting place for all attendees and encourages each person here to contribute to a fostering and secure, welcoming environment in which our meetings take place. For a mind like me, that opens up Pandora's box. And what I'm saying by that is we're not only talking physical safety, but we're talking mental, emotional, spiritual, and there's different levels and layers of safety. And unfortunately, some meetings you can go to and or groups, it would be the opposite. You would feel threatened at any one of those levels, hostile, talked down to, talked about, and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty broad brush statement, but at the same time, it goes to the core of what Alcoholics Anonymous is and isn't. And as it would be said, it goes as this. As our traditions remind us, the formation and operation of an AA group resides within the group conscience. Therefore, we ask that group members and others refrain from any behavior which might compromise another person's safety. And it's a lot more than getting physically roughed up. In fact, sometimes physically getting roughed up is a lot easier than the mental, emotional, or spiritual getting roughed up. So it goes on to say, also, please take the precautions you feel necessary to ensure your own personal safety. For example, walking your car in a group after a meeting. If a situation should arise where someone feels their safety is in jeopardy or the situation breaches the law, the individuals involved should take such appropriate action. Calling the proper authorities do not go against any AA traditions and is recommended when someone may have broken law or engaged or endangered the safety of one person. Service material printed from General Service Office. On the back, it goes as this. Our common welfare. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of the great whole. AA must continue to live or most of us will surely die. Hence, our welfare comes first, but individual welfare comes close afterwards. We went at great length at week number 1, tradition, long form, or in one word, unity. And unity is obviously spelled out. There's different types of unity, and we will get there. It goes on to say, it is hoped that our common suffering as alcoholics and our common solution in AA will transcend most issues and curtail negative behaviors that could jeopardize the safety of anyone attending an AA meeting. Nevertheless, Alcoholics Anonymous is a microcosm of the larger society we exist in. As such, problems found in the outside world can also make their way into the rooms of AA. Oh, really? Okay. I'm glad they told me that. It says, for this reason, groups and members discuss the topic of safety to raise awareness in the fellowship and seek through sponsorship, workshops, and meetings to create as safe environment as possible to carry AA's message of hope and recovery to the still suffering alcoholic. Absolutely fascinating, isn't it? We'll leave it at that. So, we always like to read this, what's Bill wrote, and it's called The Language of the Heart. And he goes on to say, why, at this particular point in history, has God chosen to communicate his healing grace to so many of us? Every aspect of this global unfoldment can be related to a single crucial word. That word is communication. There has been a life-saving communication among ourselves, with the world around us, and with God. From the beginning, communication in AA has been no ordinary transmission of helpful ideas and attitudes. Because of our kinship in suffering and because of our common means of delivery, are effective for ourselves only when constantly carried to others. Our channels of contact have always been charged with the language of the heart. And the ones that haven't been here, we've coined these 3 pertinent ideas. We know and how it works. There's 3 pertinent ideas. And we've established that the 12 traditions are called Why It Works. And the 3 pertinent ideas, all of these traditions individually and together will have all 3 of these pertinent ideas in them. Some are more noticeable. Obviously, the first one is unity, primary purpose and responsibility. And we found out how we get these things are through these 2 words, and it's humility and sacrifice. Oddly enough, that's the keynote in Tradition 12, but at the same time, it was a requirement for Tradition 1. Not to go backwards, but 3 is the lucky number. And remember, we talked about the 3 relations that these 12 traditions were for. Talked about unity, Tradition 1, and all of them, and we found out that he takes it to a different level. Substantial unity, essential unity, permanent unity, powerful unity, perfect unity, and wonderful unity. And I think by him doing that, I think I get what Tradition 1 is the answer to what we're trying to solve, and the other 11 traditions are what we don't do to ensure that. We went to great length to talk about the difference between an AA group and a group of AAs. An AA meeting and a meeting of AAs, 2 totally different things. Talked about last week about the special purpose group And some of them think they are a special group, and we'll read about you in the archives when you are no longer meeting. Did I say that? I did. So, yes. Every now and then I just can't help myself. I just want to see if you're still awake. So, Bill said he wrote these 12 traditions for a design for survival. I want to read a couple things real quick, and we visited some of these before, but it is worth repeating. He says the 12 points of our tradition are little else than a specific application of the spirit of the 12 steps of recovery to our group life and our relations with society in general. The recovery steps would make each individual AA whole and one with God. The 12 points of our tradition would make us one with each other and whole with the world about us. Unity is our aim. our AA traditions are, we trust, securely anchored in those wise precepts: charity, gratitude, and humility. I'll be darned it is there. Nor have we forgotten prudence. Some people think that's not a good word. Bill used that, and boy, he was a master. Prudence is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a very good thing. It falls in between the middle of the left and the right, the blue and the red and all that. Prudence right down the middle. That word compromise, prudence is that. And it says, may these virtues ever stand clear before us in our meditation. May Alcoholics Anonymous serve God. It don't serve me, it serves God. I get it, okay. In happy unison for as long as He may need us. And when I get down to what Bill wrote there, I really, really see what the traditions are about. Anyhow, Bill said in December of 1947, our whole AA program is securely founded on the principle of humility. That is to say, the perspective that we relate ourselves rightly to God and our fellows. And I talked about humility is three things: cut down the right size with myself, Almighty God, and my fellow man. We don't grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous, we grow down. Bill said in October of 1947, success of AA could be the heady wine and a serious problem. And he said, first things will always need to be first, and that is humility before success, unity before fame. Bill also said, if we maintain humility and so our unity, and Bill always reminds us that unflattering point of departure, we are people who could not exist at all except for the grace of God. And obviously, Bill said, quote, 12 steps and 12 traditions, mainly these were principles designed for ego reduction. The 12 traditions take us from anonymity to humility and all points in between. And we find out we are like the grains of sand on the beach of life. Without that beach, we could not exist, and the reverse is true. The beach of life could not exist with us. So we need to find our little granule and where we need to fit in this thing. Absolutely mind-boggling when Bill has a way of putting that into those words. Simply, he said, we needed a statement of principles, some form of code of tradition, a genuine need for some great unifying, overreaching set of truths that could apply to all groups all the time and serve them in growth, just like the steps do for the individual. And obviously, we found out that AA stays whole or we die. So, with that being said, we'll pass out the syllabus of what, if you haven't been here before, what this is the page numbers, and it's like a ongoing thing. And no, I am not a paper salesman, but this is how it goes. I give you each week and the weeks before in case you weren't here. And the reason that I don't give you all the weeks ahead, because there may be an addition to or a subtraction from, plus that, and if I give it to you, you might not come back and I'd be here by myself. So yeah. So there is method to the madness. Now, what we always like to do, if you haven't been here, we like to start with the short form of the tradition of the week, which happens to be number 4, and then when we go with the long form. Quickly, the short form was pared down the long form into 200 words so they could be read at meetings. They used to do that almost at every meeting, and that has become a lost art for many meetings in the year 2017. We also established that it was a guy by the name of Earl Treat, and he's the guy who took AA to Chicago and is known as the founder of AA in Chicago. We've also established, too, that much of the meaning and the history of the tradition in the short form can be lost or not conveyed because, obviously, it's a lot shorter. And tonight's difference between long and short form is huge. It will explain that. Anyhow, the short form of number 4. Each group, wait a minute, I can't even go any further unless I got that. Each group should be autonomous. That's a New York $10 word. Autonomy is what they used to say, autonomous. Except in matters affecting other groups. Thank you. So that's twice in here. Groups or AA as a whole. So what is autonomous? All right, autonomy is a $10 big word. Autonomous is self-government, any state that governs itself. And it says, according to the definition of autonomy, and if you are going to be autonomous, you have to have this condition of autonomy. And that is independence or freedom as the will or one action, the condition of being autonomous, self-government or the right of self-government, and 3, a self-governing community. Bill knew exactly the words to use at the exact time. So there's a lot of power on that, but let's see what really the power relies on the next one. Listen to the difference, please, for the long form. With respect to its own affairs, each AA group, oh God almighty, okay, should be responsible to none other authority than its own conscience. I can tell right out the gate there, guess what he just got done doing? That was tradition 2. So that means I got to have 2 to do 4, and 4 mirrors 2, but it gets better or worse as you look at it, y'all. Come on. And it says, but when its plans concern the welfare of other neighboring groups, also, those groups ought to be consulted. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Talking about a lost art. Most groups they talk about each other. They don't talk to each other. Did I say that? I did. Lost art. And I will give it to you. There's a lot of reasons for that because there's so many groups. And then also you got to remember when these were written. Alcoholics Anonymous and the formation of what it is, the society was different in sheer numbers and so on and so forth, but go on with this. And it says, and no group, or no group, regional committee, or individual should ever take any action that might greatly affect AA as a whole without conferring to the trustees of the General Service Board on such issues. Our common welfare is paramount. So now I see what 4 is. It's tradition 2, and it's tradition 1. And since I have tradition 3, which describes and what tells me what membership is, I've got to have 1, 2, and 3 to get to 4. Absolutely fascinating. So what is the word paramount? It's chief, and that's not Wahoo, by the way. That's not an outside issue. That's Maine. Chief in importance or impact, supreme, preeminent, above others in rank or authority. So now I really, really get it. So see how he's done. Tradition 4 in the long form is traditions 1, 2, and 3. Absolutely fascinating to see that, understand it, and know where we go. So, obviously, tradition 4 mirrors 2. Tradition 2 talks about our group conscience and authority. Tradition 4 ensures tradition 1, which is unity. There is no way that on the short form I can get what the long form just got done saying, and wait till you see what he says about that. With that being said, we like to read this thing here too. the spiritual principles of the traditions, of the 12 traditions. The 12 traditions are often referred to as why it works. They ensure the continuance of AA as a whole by providing guidelines for groups to evaluate their activities and actions. In a practical vein, they are individually and collectively humility builders for the group. They ask the group consider its conduct from a broader perspective and, when necessary, give up something for the overall good of AA. Suppose that would be a way of saying one word, sacrifice. It says the traditions also contain spiritual principles. These principles, when applied in our lives, complement the 12 steps as a guide to personal recovery. Okay, obviously, the spiritual principles of the traditions I try to strive for in my daily life, number 4. Eventually, hopefully sooner than later, but that's not it. Eventually, we must, conform to whatever tested principles guarantee survival. Sobriety must be our sole objective. In all other respects, there is perfect freedom of will and action. We have the right to be wrong, but we no longer have the right to harm others. That New York word, autonomy. You can see, after we are done with tonight, not to look forward, but yes, this is turning the soil over for the next 2 traditions. Absolutely fascinating, the process that he's going through this. How many is that, Justin? That's a couple, 3. I have 4 already. Okay. AF, I'm going to just abbreviate that. So, autonomy means every AA group can manage its affairs exactly as it pleases, except when AA as a whole is threatened. So, any 2 or 3 alcoholics, we established that yesterday, gathered for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided they have no other affiliation. As a group being autonomous, 2 things we shouldn't do. Number 1, these are called storm signals. Do anything that would injure AA as a whole or affiliate with anybody or anything, especially reform groups, politics, religion, addictions, special interests, so on and so forth. Obviously, it says over the years, and this is our history, over the years, every conceivable deviation has been tried, which created the process of trial and error, which under the grace of God we stand today. Everybody's got the right to be wrong, except when you go in somebody else's hoop. I do not have that. Obviously, the individual as well as the group must eventually conform to the principles, 12 traditions, that guarantee our survival. And of course, we find out that in this group, and when all the well-meaning AAs, after last week of the rules for membership, they did a survey in the beginning. And if they put them all together, neither Dr. Bob nor Bill would have qualified to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And 9/10 of the people in AA could not have been in AA. So you see how we meant well, but how fastly we screwed this thing up. So obviously, it's very, very important. And when it comes to this tradition, and really with all of them, personal observation and experience, the 2 biggest sins in the world is to keep myself from God in the spiritual awakening, spiritual experience. And the only sin bigger than that is when I do the same for somebody else or to somebody else. Either I'm purposely and or inadvertently, the bottom line is the same, I'm keeping them away from the power and everything that we're talking about. 2 heavy-duty sins. So, autonomy equals the responsibility to myself, to God, and AA. Remember I circled number 3. Isn't it funny? I call it the Trinity, trifecta, whatever you want to call it. A lot of 3s in Bill stuff and what we're doing, and that's the Trinity, or the trifecta, if you will, of autonomy. Obviously, when we say the right to be wrong, but who is going to pay that price when somebody's wrong? Sometimes pay a big, big, big price for that. And certainly I don't have the right to have somebody pay my bills. That's how it was when I was out there before we came in here, so I need to do that. So what are the prices you pay for that? The right to be wrong. For the individual, it's confusion. For the group, it's divisive, and for the drunk, it's to die. They're pretty heavy penalties to pay for that right to be wrong. Here, this one cartoon thing, and I wish I had the PowerPoint and whatever I could have, would have, should have, and yeah, buts. But anyhow, in the cartoon form, where are we? I think we got them here, right? Yeah, is it right here? 12 Traditions Illustrated. This is where we got. Anyhow, on Tradition 4, here it is right here. It explains to it. In this bottom one, please get this, it gives a picture of this rosebud group. And all you young'uns, that bud isn't what you put in the pipe and smoke. We're doing that. But anyhow, on this rosebud group, this is show and tell as we're going down there. This is Victory, the guy trying to get sober and stay sober. He's watching this rosebud group going down, what is that? That's Market Street. Yeah, they're going down Market Street. And this rosebud group says, in the first thing, it says Rosebud Group of AA, and he's got a big drum. And of course, there's all kinds of people, and one says, join the Rosebud Group of AA. Another one is carrying a sign that says, we're not anonymous, we're proud. One's got a sign saying, free beer at your first meeting. And the last one says, when you join the in crowd when you join AA. Now, you can tell that's absolutely not right because any good AA group would serve vodka and not beer. So, yeah, because you can't smell it. It's over the top. That's over the top with that illustration. But it is the truth. That is the truth. Now, that's one group that has destroyed a lot of people's chance for recovery and destroyed Alcoholics Anonymous. And we find out that this tradition later on actually complements some other ones when we maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, film, and heaven forbid, cyberspace. And when we get to that session, I will tell you how I suffered sufficiently on that. What is that Facebook? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and talk about that right now. It was Founders Day weekend, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. By the time I got home after the deal was gone, my phone was lit up. This one guy, I laugh about it, she just tore me an ass over the phone on the, you wouldn't believe. How dare you do that? I can't believe you do that. And I called her up, I said, help a brother out here, what is it that I did? She goes, well, you are all over Facebook. I said, oh, is that right? That's nice. I've never been on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. And I did not, would not, do not ever endorse anybody taking a picture of me anywhere in an AA meeting, much less putting it on something like that. True story. And what I'm saying about that level of press, radio, and film and anonymity, it's an epidemic and it ain't a pretty one. And we'll save that for that week at that point in time. But this group is more or less kind of doing the same thing when we get to that, and it's absolutely something that we need to safeguard. And it's not, I don't care about me. Everybody in the world knows or whatever. That's not the point. I care about the new guy or gal that's hiding outside the room out there, because if that kind of, I'm going to say it, if that kind of shit gets on Facebook, how many people are you keeping out of AA because they're going to be afraid to come in here that they're going to be all over the thing? And we're killing them. We're killing people, okay? Not to mention what it does to Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. What? This is AA and non-alcoholics are seeing that? I can't send them there. I won't send them there. Yeah, I mean, it's danger, epidemic in proportions that we just wouldn't believe at this point in time. Sorry to bleed out on that, but this segues or it gets ready for us to talk about that. Could not talk about that. So, the autonomy as far as the group, as we're going with that, and once again, the storm signals that we talked about, action that might seriously affect AA as a whole or surrounding groups, and here's what it is. The group would have to stick to its course or be lost. You can see what he's getting ready to do for Tradition 4 and 5. Sobriety has to be its sole objective. And of course, we find out from this Tradition 2 that Rule 62, don't take yourself too damn serious because nobody else is going to. it's a beautiful study that we're going to have this evening. So, now that we've presently ready to start in to see what Bill has to say about Tradition 4. And I joke about it. Tradition 4, maybe out of all of them, I think all of them are a forgotten idea or the lost art in Alcoholics Anonymous, especially for, we're talking about other groups, and what we're doing to AA as a whole. I will give it to you. There's a thing called dichotomy in life. That means two sides to every coin. Out of everything good, something bad's going to come out of it. Out of everything bad, something's good's going to come out of it. The dichotomy, double-edged sword, the sweet and sour, the paradoxes, if you will, and certainly this tradition number 4 would fall into those guidelines. See what he says on page 80 and 82 about Tradition 4. By the way, if you get a chance, once again, if you haven't been with us, please note the dates that these were written. This is March of 1948. And if you didn't know that, you could have sworn that he would have just written these last year or today or last night. Tradition 4 is a specific application of the general principles already outlined in Traditions 1 and 2. Oh, Tradition 1 is unity. Tradition 2 is a informed group conscience with the ultimate authority being God. I said it earlier, but now you see it. It's not what I said, it's what he says. So obviously it is what it is. And what he didn't say, the only way we could have this is by observing Tradition 3. So he says, Tradition 1. Isn't that cool how he makes a statement, then he explains it, and we're on Tradition 4, but he's bringing us up to where we're at. He says, Tradition 1 states, quote, each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of a great whole. AA must, that should, could, ought to, continue to live, or most of us will surely die. I suppose that would fall into all these unities that he's talking about. I get it. Thank you so much. Okay. And he goes on to say, hence, our common welfare comes first. He didn't say second. He didn't say third. First. That's number 1. Okay. But individual welfare follows close afterwards. Now he goes on to say, Tradition 2 states for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. With these concepts, what concepts? Oh, Tradition 1 and Tradition 2 that he just talked about. Let us look more closely at Tradition 4. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. See, it isn't absolutely fascinating, it's absolutely beautiful. It says, the first sentence guarantees that each AA group local autonomy, period. With respect to its own affairs, the group may make decisions, adopt any attitudes that it likes. No overall or intergroup authority should change this primary privilege. We feel this ought to be so, even though the group might sometimes act with complete indifference to our tradition. Now, how cool is that? He's given us all enough rope to hang ourselves individually, and now he's given the groups enough rope to hang themselves and jump off voluntarily. And we do. Anytime a group no longer exists, it's because they did not observe or follow these unifying spiritual principles. There was a great historian or a great writer said, any civilization or society that no longer exists had one thing in common. They forgot where they came from. All you have to do is go back, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, you just go back. Every one of them. They might be saying that about this someday too. Forgot where they came from. Got news for you. Alcoholics Anonymous is no different than any other of them, other than we're full of alcoholics. Wow, that's a dangerous thought, isn't it? Okay, so it goes on to say, it says, for example, an AA group could, if it wished, to hire a paid preacher and support him out of the proceeds of the group nightclub. Though such an absurd procedure would be miles out of our tradition, the group's right to be wrong would be held inviolate. We are sure that each group can be granted and safely granted these most extreme privileges. We know that our familiar process of trial and error would similarly eliminate both the preacher and the nightclub. They have to find a different job. Okay, it says the severe growing pains which invariably followed any radical departure from AA tradition can be absolutely relied upon to bring an erring group back into line. An AA group need not be coerced by any human government and above its own members. Their own experience plus AA opinion in surrounding groups plus God's promoting in the group conscience or prompting in the group's conscience would be sufficient. It's another trifecta, by the way. There's a 3 right there. Okay, and it says, much travail has already taught us, hence we could confidently say to each group, you should be responsible to no other authority than your group conscience. Now, you think it would be a free-for-all, but listen to how he reins us back in. Yet, please note one important qualification. It will be seen that such extreme liberty of thought and action applies only, squiggly writing, italicized, very important, to the group's own affairs. Rightly enough, the tradition goes on to say, but when its plans concern the welfare of other neighboring groups, also these groups ought to be consulted. Obviously, if any individual group or regional committee could take an action that might seriously affect the welfare of Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole or seriously disturb surrounding groups, that would not be liberty at all. It would be sheer license. It would be anarchy, not democracy. Therefore, we A's have universally adopted that principle of consultation. Question mark. Okay. That means if a single AA group wishes to take any action that might affect surrounding groups, it consults them. Or it confers with the intergroup committee for the area if there be one. Likewise, if a group or regional committee wishes to take any action that might affect AA as a whole, it consults the trustees of the Alcoholic Foundation, who are, in effect, the overall General Service Committee. For instance, no group or intergroup could feel free to initiate without consultation any publicity that might affect AA as a whole. Nor could it presume to represent the whole of Alcoholics Anonymous by printing and distributing anything purporting to be AA standard literature. For what it's worth, 19 times he talks about this. I must know what this is and isn't. Because if not, I can't get what he just got done talking about. That's how important the pamphlet and our conference-approved literature is. He goes on to say, the same principle would naturally apply to all similar situations, though there is no formal compulsion to do so. All undertakings of this general character are customarily checked by AA General Headquarters. The idea is clearly summarized in the last sentence of the Tradition 4, which observes, on such issues our common welfare is paramount. Tradition 4 is unity for all of AA, like Tradition 1 is for the individual to the group. Absolutely fascinating how he takes it and puts it in the broader perspective, if you will. Tradition 4 obviously comes in exactly where it needs to be. Page 93. About the third paragraph where it says Tradition 4. Third paragraph where it says Tradition 4, or second paragraph, my bad. Tradition 4 implies, page 93 where it says Tradition 4. Tradition 4 implies that we abandon all idea of centralized human authority or government, but each group is enjoined to consult widely in the matters affecting us all. Isn't that cool how he just cuts that down to 2 sentences and explains what that tradition is? Might be too easy or too simple. Let's see what 3:17 says. It's the last paragraph on page 317 where